Hey guys, so we're redoing this one, had some audio issues in the last one. This time I'm going to go through and see if I can't speed it up a little bit. This is November 22nd. There is a balance patch today, a rather large one. Unlike some of the other ones, it doesn't affect a lot of tanks, and we'll get right into it. I did have an ad read. I'm going to skip the majority of that so you guys don't need to deal with that because of all the other issues. But if you guys do want to support me, check out Join Honey down below. Save some money while shopping. Costs you guys nothing. It's just an extension. That being said, let's get right into it. Season Marksman. Very few people still have it. They're just reducing the cooldown of it, increasing the attack speed bonus duration, so you can have that going a little bit longer, while also using it more often. It's just going to be a stronger talent for those that do have it, and overall shouldn't make any major changes in the meta. And also, guys, while I go over all these heroes, I'm going to be talking about my opinions of where they are and where they're going to go with the changes that they currently have. That being said, let's get right into it. This is the list of heroes that are being changed, and right off the bat, we have Arthas. Now, they moved Arthas' talents around just so that Q's always on top, W's always next, E's after that, and then your trait is the last thing. Level 4, Death Lord. It is a talent that makes it to where it reduces his Q cooldown. Now it's also going to refund the mana if used on an enemy. This isn't going to make a major difference at level 4, but by level 7, when you can return your health, it's going to be very, very valuable and extremely strong. The challenge is level 7 is after the first objective of the game, so it will not always be the best talent. It is a talent that's going to be good here or there depending on the matchup, but it can allow you to really dominate in the solo lane. It won't do too much outside of the solo lane. Diablo's Sacrificial Soul. Souls gained from stunning an enemy hero are increased from 5 to 10. This is not a great talent. You shouldn't be using your engage as a tool to get stronger. You should be getting stronger and saving your engage for that perfect moment, because every time that you engage, you're risking dying, and especially with more percent health heroes entering the game and more high damage to tanks entering the game, which we'll see later in this balance patch. You never want to risk it just to gain a couple souls. Then we have Leoric. Leoric's getting an overall buff to Q and then a buff to one of his underutilized talents, where if you toss Drain Hope on someone, when it finishes, you'll get 3 seconds off your cooldown. That pretty much makes it to where you have no cooldown on your W. As long as you can keep landing it, you're going to keep having Drain Hope going. And again, like I said, more percent health is going to be approaching the game, so scary for people like Diablo. Sonya, overall buffs to both her spin build and her auto attack build. Spin build is getting a buff. I don't know why it says W for Whirlwind when Whirlwind's on E, but hey, let's say that hopefully it's still Whirlwind. Leap is getting a slight buff by getting a cooldown reduction, and Rampage is getting a buff. So essentially what Rampage does is whenever you auto attack, it does 25% more damage, and whenever you auto attack, you're going to have your spear cooldown reduced by 0.5 seconds. Well, in this case, it's going to be 1.5 seconds. It's a really good buff to auto attack build, and it's a really good buff to spin build. So overall, really good. Alexstrasza is getting a buff to E build and just a couple underutilized talents. Flames of Fury, which was your E, reducing the cooldown of dragon form, is now also just going to baseline reduce its mana cost. Heat Exhaustion, which was your E, now slows targets by a higher amount. The slow is going to be reduced to 50%, but it's going to make it to where it no longer decays. So overall, I think that's going to be generally better for continually landing your slows. Dragon Scales is when you get hit by a CC, you gain 40 armor. In this case, it's going to be 50. I'm still not a huge fan of this talent because the other two talents are so good. I had one team fight where I pacified 4 people in like under 10 seconds. So Pacify is incredible at locking down their carry, as well as preventing their front line from getting closer to your back line or vice versa. The level 16 talent Tough Love, giving armor whenever you use Q when you're above 75% health. It was again just outclassed by being able to stay dragon form longer, but seeing as the Alexstrasza might be used more on maps where dragon form isn't as necessary, that Q could increase the armor. The reason why I don't like this talent, for a few other reasons than just it's outclassed in my opinion for what Alexstrasza is used for, is I don't like the idea of in Q build anyways, if you use Q on the front line, you're dropping a flower in the front line. So when they need the armor, you can't use Q on them because you're going to drop the flower in a place you can't retrieve it. So on paper, this is such a great talent, but in practice, it's a talent that often just gets you killed, or it just makes it to where you drop too many flowers and you can't stay above 75% health. Ancient Flames, it's just a buff to E-build as well. What Ancient Flames used to do is it would make it to where your auto attack in Dragon Form would apply your Flame, which would slow enemies and trigger all your other flame effects, but it would slow your attack speed. Now it doesn't slow your attack speed, so it's just overall pretty strong. This is giving E-build a stronger early game while also giving it a stronger late game if you can hit post 20. Overall, definitely interesting changes. I think in the meta, the only thing this is really going to change is make her stronger on maps that don't use your dragon at the during the objective. So, for example, on Sky Temple, use Dragon to push the enemies off of the objective long enough to where you win the objective. But on maps like Tomb of the Spider Queen, where the objectives are just constantly going back and forth, turn-ins are constantly going back and forth, there's no perfect time to use Dragon, and I think this is where E-build's really going to thrive. Normally, the answer to that was just don't pick Alexstrasza on those maps, but now this gives her a build that you can actually do something with. Still faces all the same problems of E-build currently, which is you're predictable and where you're going to be, and it can be stopped by the enemies just playing slightly differently. So it does still have the same problems, but it is certainly a lot stronger than it used to be. Brightwing, Greater Polymorph no longer is going to reset on the polymorph or on takedowns. It still gives the extra range, and now if you hit them with an Arcane Flare after you polymorph them, it's going to reduce the cooldown of polymorph by 60 seconds, and you're going to gain some mana back. If you know anything about Arcane Flare on Brightwing, you know it's easiest to land when they're polymorphed, because then they're slow, they don't have the chance to really move in a lot of directions, and people kind of move predictably. You polymorph them, they walk away from you. You throw your Q out, and you always land it. So it's really cool. It'll work in either a W or a Q-oriented build, so if you don't want to go Bribe, but you still want to go Q build, I think this is going to be a great talent to make Brightwing much more efficient in teamfights. Speaking of being much more efficient in teamfights, Critical Mist is going to heal people right off the bat, as well as it's going to double that healing if you do remove a CC effect. So I still don't think this talent's really up there. It's on a pretty competitive tier. If it like cut the cooldown in half or something, sure. Safety Dust, pretty big buff for this talent. Bonus healing increased from 25% to 75%. I used to use this talent to throw like a dust on someone, immediately teleport to them, get that bonus heal, and then ult them to get another heal. You could pretty much fully heal a Diablo. Now, with that bonus healing, it's just going to be a really efficient talent, and I will take it in more cases than I took it in the past, because before I just took it from some like really cheesy heals on big health targets. Now I could see it being a pick that you could pick into a lot of situations. Rehgar, Feral Heart, no longer increases your mana regen while in Ghost Wolf. Additional functionality. So what it still does is it still gives you healing in Ghost Wolf, but it doesn't give you that the mana regen while in Ghost Wolf. The problem with this talent before is that you would have to stay in Ghost Wolf, and you never wanted to stay in Ghost Wolf because you wanted to stay in the form that you can cast the most abilities, and Ghost Wolf should always be off cooldown and ready for you to immediately activate it to do burst damage to someone or immediately activate it to get out of a fight. And so having it to where you had to stay in Ghost Wolf really reduced a lot of the utility of Rehgar. This allows you to quickly get burst mana when you need it. And if you're constantly aggressive in the early game, this is going to be a great talent in the early game. The challenge is this talent's pretty weak in the late game, so I don't think this is going to be a go-to, but if people like the Wolf builds, then they can give it a shot. Overall, just buffs to underutilized talents on Tyrande. She was already pretty strong in general, but to see these buffs is not bad. So they buff the underutilized ultimate, they buff the underutilized talents, and then the level 20 upgrades, they buffed a few of them just because most people were taking the extra star stun on every 8 auto attacks and the extra range and all that. Whitemane, this is kind of a weird one. I'm going to focus on the changes that matter the most. W cooldown and is being lowered and damage is being increased. Overall, decent buff. Pity the Frail. We'll pull up, let's pull up Hero's Hearth really quick. And I'll pull up her talents so we can see those really fast. But overall, buff to her ult, reducing the cooldown and increasing the unstoppable duration if you take that upgrade. Bonus healing from Martyrdom, which is your Q talent, and then the Pity the Frail cooldown reduction is increased from your W, and I believe it's when you land your E, but it's been a while since I've played. It's been a while since I played some Whitemane, so let's double check what that actually is. It was Pity the Frail. For each hero hit with Searing Lash, lower the cooldown of Inquisition by 1 second. Allies below 30% health receive more healing. So yes, now when you hit people with your Lash, it will reduce the cooldown of your W. I don't think this is going to make a major change with Whitemane. The people who have been enjoying playing her will notice her being a little bit stronger in general, but I don't think that this is going to affect too much in the meta. Alarak was pretty much permanently banned in high-ranked play for North America and Europe, so I'm hoping that this is going to improve that. Because they are nerfing his damage a little bit, and they're making his W harder for it to trigger its effect at level 1, and Show of Force is also getting a slight nerf. This really won't affect him by that much. It's a overall nerf. A lot of people call these just like the 1% nerfs, where you're trying to just lower someone's win rate by like 1% at a time per nerf, and it seems like that's kind of what this is, just like a 1% nerf, where they lower his damage by like 3% here, they lower his damage by like 8% here, but these are all just small pieces of his kit, so overall it's only going to really make a 1% change. It also could be considered a threshold nerf, but I'm not really seeing the threshold that it's trying to break. And what a threshold nerf is essentially if a hero has the ability to 100% combo another hero, and you nerf him by 1%, well, now if he throws everything out, maybe the other hero survives by 1%, and that 1% is long enough to where they can get healed back up and stay in the fight. That's a threshold nerf, where something seems very small, but it actually reduces it by a very specific threshold. Another threshold nerf would be if you lower the damage that someone does enough to where they used to be able to like clear a minion wave with like 2 casts of an ability, but then after you do the like a small 1% nerf, it's now 3 casts of an ability. Again, another threshold nerf. This doesn't look like a threshold nerf. It looks like a 1% nerf, so we'll see how that affects him. Genji needs way more damage. He's got a 40% win rate, even by the people who have been playing him by a considerable amount. And just during fights, he just really does nothing outside of getting that perfect scenario where someone's about to die. You go and you do some damage, you get a reset, you get another hit, and then you do a little bit more damage. But after all of his nerfs from the competitive scene, he's not even being used in the competitive scene anymore, and his win rates in the regular games, he is the second lowest win rate hero in the game, right above Cho'Gall, which we've all agreed is kind of a hard hero to balance, but Genji should be a little bit easier to balance. I've always said that the best way to balance Genji is make it to where his mobility isn't the big factor of him. He is certainly a ninja, but ninjas also still do damage. So I would have liked to see him riskier when he uses his mobility, make his mobility stronger, but make it riskier. So if he uses his dash to go in and he doesn't get a kill, he should be punished for it by having a considerably long cooldown with the rest of his mobility. I just think that he needs more damage. So his changes are all underutilized talents. I mean, Strike at the Hearts was the meta talent. They're making it to where it's not damage over time, but it's bursty. Augmented Shield, just underutilized talents. Dodge, underutilized talent. X Strike, they're just buffing it a little bit. Really needs more buffs than this. Junkrat, he was in a good spot. He actually had it, when I checked it, he had a 50.8% win rate, so pretty dead on. 50% win rate, 51 if you round up. They're just, honestly, they're just buffing a couple or buffing Boom Pow, nerfing Sticky Wicket, and then they're nerfing the Riptire. We've all seen the video of the Riptire going off over and over and over in team fights. We don't see that anymore. Kill the Zod, buffing underutilized talents and nerfing overused talents. Just, again, nothing really major in the overall sense of the game. Lunara, they're buffing her her early game, they're nerfing her late game. So essentially how this is going to work is Lunara 1 through 18 is going to be the same or better or the same. Level 19 is going to be exactly the same, and level 20 on is going to be reduced. So overall, Lunara's win rate should go up a little bit, and she's going to be just slightly weaker when you hit that post 20. She did have a pretty strong post 20 to begin with, so I don't think it's going to feel as bad. And I think in general, this is a odd change, just nothing I was really expecting, but hey, we'll see how it goes. Again, a lot of these have been negligible so far. Nazeebo is the first one that it's going to be pretty interesting. Widowmakers is a quest that you had that when you threw your Q out, the more times the spiders hit it, the more damage would be done by those spiders, up to a maximum of 100% more, or sorry, 100 more damage, if I remember correctly. Let's pull up Nazeebo really quick. We'll pull up Nazeebo, and we're also going to pull up Zagara. Nazeebo, so his talent, after hitting 100 hero or 100 times, it would increase the spider's damage by 30%. Now it's also going to increase the, it's also going to give you back cooldown, and it's also going to give you mana back, or at least reduce the mana cost and reduce the cooldown. You don't even need to hit them. This is a very feast or famine build, because during team fights, if you missed your Q, you just kind of lost the team fight, and that's fixed now. Things of the Deep was a talent that just pretty much increased your range, and it was picked in a lot of like hybrid builds where people would take the best talent of every tier and just kind of run with it. And that is now going to increase your spell power by 10% on your first 50 stacks and 10 extra percent on your next on 100 stacks. So as the game's going on, you're likely going to get 50 stacks before level 10 for an extra 10% spell power, and then 100 stacks usually is around level 13 if you're on pace for that extra 10% spell power. Pretty good overall. It's going to make people that are going for like a stacking builds just overall stronger, and then people that want to go for like the Q or the E builds. Then we've got Dead Rush. They're buffing the damage of your zombies after they drop, so they go chase after people, and they're buffing the level 20 upgrade of Ravenous Spirit. This is actually a pretty strong buff, albeit you're going to be losing one of the major pieces of Nazeebo, which is getting that extra damage over time on everyone from all of your abilities. So I don't know if this is going to be the best thing for a level 20 upgrade, but it's not terrible either. And so just so you guys know what it does is it increases the range and the movement speed. Now it's not going to increase the movement speed, it's just going to be the range and increase damage based off the amount of targets you hit. Hits twice a second, which means that if you're hitting one target, you're going to be gaining 10% extra damage every second that it's out. If you're hitting 5 targets, then you're going to be gaining an extra 50% damage for every second that it's out, and that's already a pretty high damage ability. So it could be really strong, but again, you're missing out of one of his best talents. Overall, I think the major meta change that this is going to do is it's going to make the competitive side of Widowmakers a little bit better. And for everyone else, I think Thing of the Deep may be the new build where you kind of just take the best talent in every tier, take those hybrid talents, take the W talents, and go from there. I don't think it's going to change level 20 too much, but I honestly think this is a pretty interesting change, and I like it. Zagara I've actually play tested since this balance patch, because I said that when I had the audio issues, I said I was going to make a video on Zagara. So I've been playing around with some of these changes, but let's talk about them. So she's getting a basic attack damage increased. Volatile Acid no longer increases Baneling's damage against non-heroics. Instead, it's just going to increase damage to Banelings. This one also increased the range, so it's going to be range and damage. This one no longer increases Roach's damage against non-heroics. Instead, it's going to give you Roach health from the level 1 talent. Infest increases the damage of ranged minions starting at 125%, and then again it keeps growing by an extra percent for every 1,000 siege damage that you have. Serrated Spines, basic attack damage is being changed from 0.3 flat damage to 0.2 per stack, which is being increased because, I mean, naturally you're going to have higher basic attack damage. So what essentially happens from this is if you want to know when the cutoff point is to where it's going to be worth the same amount, 0.3 flat damage means every 3 auto attacks you would increase your damage by 1, give or take. I mean 0.9, but let's say 1 if we round up. In order to have that same thing, we need to hit essentially at level 1, it would take us like 5 auto attacks. But by level like 13, I mean by level like 7, I think it breaks even, and by level 13 it's just way better in general. So this one's actually a much better change than the Junkrat variation of this change. Baneling Massacre, I mean, I could even do the full math if we need to do that. I need to get the auto attack to the point where it is at 120 to be worth it. Because we're going from 120. Let's see. Hold on. Let's go 120 times 0.2 is, I did that wrong. Give me a second. 120 times 0.002 is 0.24. So we need it above 120. We need it to 150, right? Times, there we go. So her attack damage needs to be at that. So 85 times 1.4 is level 10. And then level 13 would be 85 times 1 point, let's see, it's 4% per, so that'd be 152. It's close. I'm also missing the first level that you gain, but either way, 85 times I mean 1 point, let's go 8, 153. So it actually doesn't equal out until later. So overall that's a nerf. Yeah, overall it's a nerf. It doesn't equal out until about level 19, and then it's slightly better at level 20. So yeah, overall that's a nerf. I read somewhere that it was level 7, and so whoever did that math, either I'm doing the math wrong or they're doing the math wrong. But from my understanding, this won't actually break even until 19, and it's better at level 20. I think it's rather weak. Baneling Massacre. No longer increases the damage of Banelings because that was moved up. Additional functionality reduces the charge cooldown of Banelings by 0.5 seconds. It's not bad. Devouring Maw, its mana cost is being reduced, its damage is being increased. Brood Expansion is being removed. Corrosive Saliva is being changed, and I want to talk about this talent a bit more after this, but it's reducing the damage of just the Hydralisk attacking the target with percent health down to 175, but it's also giving your Roachlings this opportunity. Mutalisk is reducing the cooldown. It just has this extra thing now, reduces the cooldown of Hunter Killer by 4, while you also still get the Mutalisk. And then new talent, Jagged Barbs. While on creep, you get extra 10% basic attack damage, or sorry, 10% range and 30% increased basic attack damage. What I'm going to say from all of this is that she has 2 builds now. And possibly 3. You still have the kind of try to bully people with Infest by clearing lanes, buffing up your minions, and then letting your minions push while you poke at the enemy, poke them out of lane, and then your enemy or your allies or your minions push while you just kind of chill around. That build's still around, but now she has a Summoner build, and the Summoner build's actually really high damage in team fights. I was doing about 1200 DPS to tanks at level 20, which is incredible. It's very, very high damage. And to have 1200 damage for just dropping down your stuff and then walking away is actually insane. So she actually has one of the best, I would say, anti-tank team fights now if you do decide to go with a Summoner build. You pretty much could still be run in the solo lane as a bully. You just need to get your quest done for your E so you can get that extra Baneling. And then when you get into team fights, it's best if you can fight away from waves so your minions don't accidentally attack things that aren't waves. But if you can just drop down everything in a team fight on a tank, throw everything, boom, that tank's going to die in seconds. It's a really, really powerful build for team fights now. So overall, I think that that's really good. Her auto attack build's also pretty high DPS if you wanted to run her more in the 4-man and then just keep trying to stack up your auto attacks as much as possible. Or if you're going against something like a Misha that you can just stack forever, when you hit late game, you can buff your attack damage by an extra 30%. The problem is because it's not increasing your damage by flat and then 30%, this 30% is only additive on top of the other percent that you already have, which makes it to where it's not that big when your auto attack attacks are already going to be doing like 50-60% more damage. You wish that was multiplicative. Then it just bumps it up to like 80% more damage, which isn't really that scary. But the extra range is nice. So overall, I think the main build after playing it a couple times is going to be the summon build, and I'll likely be doing a video on the summon build as soon as I can. Thank you guys so much for watching all of this. Sorry for the audio issues for those who watched the initial version of this video. I did switch to private after some people watched it, so you may have just watched the whole thing with bad audio. Apologize for that. Again, guys, very small version of the ad read. If you would like to help me out at the same time as saving money with shopping for Black Friday, Christmas, whatever, there's a app you can download on your, or it's an extension, a browser extension for your Google Chrome, Opera, whatever you use, and it will automatically look for coupons for you, while at the same time you can set drop lists where, say you are looking at something that you want to buy and you want to see if it goes on sale for Black Friday, you can set a drop list to see if it drops price. It'll notify you that it dropped price. You can also set it by a certain number, so if it drops price below your number, then it will give you a notification for you to go back and check it. You guys can do that by clicking the link that's down there, all the way down there, or it'll also be in the description as well. Thank you guys so much for watching once again, and feel free to check out any of my other videos.